Today we're looking at the outcome of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. Fighting on the Western Front came to an end on November 11th of 1918 at 11 o'clock in the morning with the signing of an armistice. World War I, or the war to end all wars, was drawing to an end. Each nation involved in the war had experienced extreme losses. Of the Central Powers, Germany experienced over 1.7 million soldiers killed and an additional 4.2 million wounded. Austria-Hungary experienced 1.2 million soldiers killed and another 3.6 million wounded. For the Allied powers, Russia experienced the largest loss, with 1.7 million killed and another 5 million wounded. France had 1.3 million killed in action and an additional 4.2 million wounded. Great Britain had a little over 900,000 killed and over 2 million wounded. The United States, that did not enter the war until 1917, had 116,000 killed and another 200,000 wounded. Now that the fighting had come to an end, it was time to establish peace. On January 18, 1919, the Paris Peace Conference began at the Palace of Versailles, with leaders of the Allied powers attending, with the exception of Russia, who had exited the war in 1917. No representatives from the Central Powers were in attendance at the conference. Very quickly, the Big Four, as they came to be known, took control of the conference and began to discuss terms for a treaty. Members of the Big Four included President Woodrow Wilson of the United States, French Premier Georges Clemenceau, British Prime Minister David Lloyd George, and lastly, Vittorio Orlando, the Prime Minister of Italy. Over a year earlier, in January of 1918, President Woodrow Wilson had already laid out his 14 points, which was a plan for peace in Europe. Some of the points Wilson called for were better economic relationships between nations, banning secret alliances or agreements between countries, and freedom for vessels to be at sea without fear of being attacked, among many other points. But a point that Wilson was very committed to was improving communication and relationships between different countries. In order to accomplish this, Wilson proposed an international assembly of nations that would work to settle disagreements and encourage democracy around the world. The assembly of countries would be called the League of Nations. As the peace conference began, though, it became very clear that most of the nations were less concerned with establishing long-lasting peace, but rather wanted to focus on punishing Germany and trying to make sure Germany never again would become a world power or threat. Part of the punishments imposed on Germany were reparations, or requiring Germany to financially pay for the damages that occurred during the war. As part of the final agreement, Germany was required to pay $33 billion in reparations for their part in the war. Germany was also required to drastically reduce their military force. Also, other European nations wanted to claim land that was part of Germany and Austria-Hungary. New borders were drawn and new independent countries were established. These nations included Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. Additionally, Poland once again became an independent country. Furthermore, agreements were made that the Central Powers would hand over their colonies to the newly formed League of Nations that would then decide what countries would oversee those colonies. On May 7, 1919, the terms of the treaty were presented to Germany. Germany refused to sign after seeing the agreed-upon points of the treaty. On June 17th, Germany was again presented with the treaty, but this time were warned that if they did not agree to sign it, within 5 days the war would resume. Germany reluctantly accepted. On June 28, 1919, representatives from the Allied powers and Central Powers met at the Palace of Versailles, and the treaty was signed, officially bringing World War I to an end. For President Woodrow Wilson, he did not get everything he had hoped for in the treaty, but the League of Nations was established, which he hoped would maintain peace. Interestingly, the Treaty of Versailles was never approved by the United States. According to the Constitution, the U.S. Senate has to approve or ratify treaties, and members of the Senate were not in favor of joining the League of Nations because it would require U.S. military forces to enter wars based on the decisions of foreign countries. Wilson argued for the U.S. to approve the treaty and join the League of Nations, but the United States never did, and instead signed separate peace treaties with Central Power nations. Unfortunately, the extensive efforts of Wilson and others at the peace conference to maintain long-lasting peace would be undone barely 20 years later with the outbreak of World War II. So, with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.